What's up, schmucks, and welcome to Turkey Bites, the show where we take a little bite out of the latest movie news. A few months back, I made a video speculating about the Clayface movie that we're getting, and since then, we've gotten some concrete details that I would like to go over, and also add in a little more speculation. This movie is going to be a big deal to me because Clayface is my favorite Batman villain. Look at all this Clayface stuff I have. This collection of Clayface comics, a hardcover of his One Bad Day story, this Funko Pop, this figure, this keychain, and this Mondo figure on pre-order, which is more stuff that I have of any given character other than Batman. Clayface is my guy, my GOAT, and straight up, if this movie is bad, I will kill myself. Anyway, what do we know so far about the Clayface movie? Well, firstly, the script has been written by Mike Flanagan, the man behind Haunting of Hill House, Dr. Sleep, Midnight Mass, and many, many more. This is a great get. Flanagan is a great horror writer with a big emphasis on character nuance, and he's been cooking up this Clayface story for years now, so I can only imagine how good that script's gonna be. All we know about the plot so far is that it will follow a B-movie actor who injects himself with a substance to keep himself relevant, only to find out that he can now reshape his face and form, becoming a walking piece of clay. Injects himself with a substance, you say? Yeah, the similarities will be rampant, I'm sure. Peter Safran, the co-CEO of DC Studios alongside James Gunn, has said Clayface will be a low-budget body horror movie akin to The Fly. And although he didn't say this, there are obvious comparisons to The Substance as well, which only came out last year. I mean, come on, an actor past their prime in the eyes of many takes weird injection for the sake of relevancy, body horror ensues. The similarities are objectively there. We also know that James Watkins will be directing. I am largely unfamiliar with his work. The only things of his I've seen are his Speak No Evil remake, which I thought was fun, and Shut Up and Dance, a very good Black Mirror episode. But I can't say that I'm super excited with this choice. I wish it was Flanagan himself directing this, or even Coralie Frejat. I don't know how to say her name, I'm really sorry. But she was the director of The Substance. And I know I said this is basically The Substance again, but if you are going to just make The Substance, why not get the person who made The Substance? Or, you know, just to throw a name out there, Leigh Whannell. I'm a huge fan of Leigh Whannell, I've made no secret of that, and he is no stranger to gross body stuff as we saw with Wolfman. But hey, who knows? Maybe this will be James Watkins' masterpiece. I do also want to add that Watkins is by no means a bad director. Shut Up and Dance and Speak No Evil are very competently directed, and the performances that Watkins gets out of his actors are excellent. Plus, he's going to be handed a script by Mike Flanagan, so this is in no way a disaster or anything. But it does feel like Watkins is a bit of a gun-for-hire director here. Maybe I need to see the rest of his filmography, but he doesn't really seem to have a unique style or vision to him. That said, a director doesn't make or break a movie. To use another villain solo movie as an example, Joker does not ride or die on Todd Phillips' direction. Joker is backed by a great Joaquin Phoenix performance, Lawrence Sherr's gorgeous cinematography, and Hildur Guðnadóttir's transcendent score. And yes, Todd Phillips' direction is very good, but my point is that it takes a village to make a movie. So Watkins being not the weakest link, but also not the strongest link in this whole thing, does not crumble the whole project. So I am very curious to see who else is going to join the creative team on Clayface. Moving on, Clayface is expected to have a budget of around $40 million, which is pretty low, but it's also not that low. Bringing up The Substance again, it had a budget of about half that with a price tag of $18 million. And to bring up Joker again, it had a budget of $55 million. But low budget horror movies are always a good gamble, low risk, high reward type stuff. You can make an Invisible Man movie for $7 million and then get a return of $145 million. It's the business model that's made Blumhouse a household name, so making Clayface on the cheap is not a bad idea. Anyway, that's about all we know for certain, so now let's speculate and shoot into the dark a little bit. I cannot tell if this is set in the DCU or if this is going to be its own thing. It wasn't announced with the other DCU slate, and it kind of seems like it's going to be in the DCU, but also no one has definitively said that it's going to be in the DCU, so it's kind of up in the air right now. The most they've let on is when James Gunn said the movie worked as a pure horror movie for somebody who doesn't care at all about DC. But still, that's not a yes or a no on its place in this cinematic universe. If it is set in the DCU, then the version of Clayface we saw in Creature Commandos is the version this movie is going to be giving an origin to. But if it's not in the DCU, then that gives Flanagan and Watkins a little freer reign to do something different. I also think it's an interesting choice to have a Superman movie this year, and then the following year do a Supergirl movie, which feels like the natural progression, but also also a low-budget horror movie Clayface, just straight up, that is fucking brilliant. I would love to just kind of dissect the genius of the DCU as a concept, but this is incredible. I also want to bring up that a couple weeks ago, James Gunn had said that the DCU Batman could appear in something before the Batman movie they're making, which some have speculated could be Clayface. I personally think Batman should be in this movie, which is something I talked about the last time I talked about the Clayface movie, so I'm just going to play that clip for you. I am curious if Batman will be in this to an extent. Batman does play a very pivotal role in each Clayface's story. You probably could get away with no Batman like Joker, but I think Batman should be in this. If we do go with Preston Payne's story, then having Batman in this as an antagonistic force trying to stop Payne from curing himself could be a really interesting take on the character. We may end up rooting for Clayface against Batman in the end. However, regardless of where this movie is placed, I don't think we're going to see a giant mudman as the protagonist of this grounded body horror movie. I think this Clayface design is going to be a little more grotesque and subtle than that, like The Fly. He may not even really look like Clayface until the end of the movie, and just be a guy who gets mushy occasionally. But Clayface as a character does lend himself to body horror. I don't love his One Bad Day story, but there is some really cool, nasty artwork in that Watkins could draw from visually. And if we're going low budget, then I would say CGI is not going to be over relied on, and we could see some pretty gnarly practical effects. I said it last time, I'll say it again. I think they should go for something like The Thing. I think the visceral, disgusting nature of The Thing's effects is what we should be aiming for with a Clayface movie. As for casting Basil Karlo himself, it's a mystery. There was a rumor that Daniel Radcliffe was in consideration, but Gunn shut that down and even added that they haven't even started the casting process yet. And then right after that, there was one that Kieran Culkin was in consideration, but going back on what Gunn said, it seems like they haven't gotten that far, so I wouldn't bank on that. I maintain that Penn Badgley would be an excellent Clayface. Joe Goldberg is so Basil Karlo coded already. But recently I watched Day of the Jackal, and I believe Eddie Redmayne would be an excellent choice for this role. I also just want to see Redmayne play more villainous characters. I didn't know he had this in him, but I know for a fact now that he could be a sympathetic psychopath, which is more or less what you need with Basil Karlo. Speaking of casting, this happened while I was making the video, but Guy Henry has joined the cast of Clayface as Agent. Most likely Basil Karlo's agent, since we're doing the actor version of Clayface. I have nothing to add to this, but I'm excited to see who they get for Karlo. And it's nice to see that this production is chugging along, so, you know, I'm sure we'll be getting more stuff soon. But yeah, we don't know a ton about Clayface, and I can't say that I love the director choice, but I love Clayface. Again, he's my favorite Batman villain, so I am beyond excited for this movie no matter what. I need this to be good. I need it. Anyway, do you have any thoughts on a Clayface movie? Any at all? I feel like people aren't overly jazzed about this. But thank you for tuning into this episode of Turkey Bites. I hope you enjoyed, and I hope to see you next time. Goodbye.